U.S. President Donald Trump says this morning that negotiations with Iran are continuing constructively, but the U.S. president tempered anticipation of an imminent deal, saying he is not planning to rush the process. Now, this comes after Trump suggested just yesterday that a deal to end the war would be coming soon. And U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio said just a few hours ago that significant progress has been made in negotiations to end the months-long conflict. Now, part of that deal is reportedly to reopen the Strait of Hormuz. That critical waterway was effectively closed when the U.S. and Israel attacked Iran in February, sending global energy prices sharply higher worldwide. Iranian state media, well, they're reporting the proposal could also include a phased-in lifting of the U.S. naval blockade. CBC's Willie Lowry is tracking all those developments for us from Jerusalem. Willie, good to see you. Let's talk about what we're hearing from Washington about where things actually stand right now with Iran.
Yeah, absolutely, Natasha. U.S. President Donald Trump appears to believe that he has time on his side in these negotiations and that the pressure is on Tehran to make a deal. Now, just a short while ago, he took to social media and slammed the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action signed back in 2015 by U.S. President Barack Obama. Trump famously pulled out of that agreement in 2018 during his first term, and in the years since has really repeatedly criticized it. Now, on social media, he said, quote, "The negotiations are proceeding in an orderly and constructive manner, and I have informed my representatives not to rush into a deal in that time, and that time is on our side." He went on to say that the blockade will remain in full force and effect until an agreement is reached, certified, and signed. Both sides must take their time and get it right. There can be no mistakes. As you mentioned, that seems to be somewhat at odds with what he said last night on social media, which was that the agreement had been largely negotiated. Now, we know that President Trump spoke last night by phone with Gulf leaders who essentially urged him to make a deal, that continuing this war would be bad for business. We also know that he spoke with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu by phone. Also, just a short while ago, Netanyahu took to social media to outline some of that conversation that he had with Trump. He said, quote, "President Trump also reaffirmed Israel's right to defend itself against threats on every front, including Lebanon." Now, that could be a really important point in the days and weeks to come as perhaps a deal is made or not. Now, we also heard from U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio, who was in India and was speaking with reporters. As you said, he said significant progress had been made, but let's hear a little bit more from the Secretary of State.
So we've made some progress over the last 48 hours working with our partners in the Gulf region on an outline that could ultimately, if it succeeds, leave us not just with a completely open straits, and I mean open straits without tolls, and with addressing some of the key things that underpin what has been Iran's nuclear weapons ambitions in the past.
While the rhetoric out of the White House today has been largely positive, we do know that there has been some criticism and opposition in Washington, particularly from some Republican lawmakers who are urging the president not to take this deal and to continue the fight against Iran.
Well, let's talk a bit more about Iran then. What are we hearing from Tehran on this deal that may or may not be close?
Yeah, absolutely. So according to Iranian state media, this memorandum of understanding is close, and it will effectively see the end of this conflict in exchange for the gradual reopening of the Strait of Hormuz. Tasnim news agency says that the number of ships transiting through this crucial waterway won't return to normal or pre-war levels for at least 30 days. Now, this is a really important point here, though. They also say that Iran will retain control over how and when ships can transit through the strait. Of course, important to note here, that was not the case before this conflict started back on February 28th.
CBC's Willie Lowry for us in Jerusalem. Thank you, Willie.
My pleasure.
Okay, let's stay on this story and invite to the show Gina Abercrombie Winstanley. She's a former U.S. ambassador and Middle East specialist. Ambassador, very good to have you on the show.
My pleasure.
Ambassador, we're getting so many mixed messages we have been right from the beginning, from February, on what exactly is taking place. Now, the president said last night the deal was imminent, more or less, and today he's saying there's no rush. What are you interpreting from what we're hearing from the White House?
Well, it seems clear that the pushback on this proposed deal is taking some drive from the president's intent to seal a deal in the next hours, if we believe the Secretary of State, or in the next several days. This was always going to be the case. The president used to refer to people who were pushing war in foreign areas as those who are not putting America first. And these sorts of Republicans have been traditional voices like Lindsey Graham, former Congressman Pompeo, who are very hawkish in American foreign policy. There is a great deal of exhaustion among the American people for this war. And so President Trump has a choice to make, whether he is going to bow to the pressure. And keep in mind, he tried to get us out of Afghanistan before the Biden administration and whiffed on that, as did President Obama. When the hawks, when those who are pushing for the primacy of American control, military power, etc., push against presidents, it's hard to stand against it. So we'll see whether President Trump believes he's got broad enough support from the American people to take these difficult steps to end the war, because he will have a great deal of difficulty arguing that the goals that were originally set have been met. In fact, it has been a combination of arrogance and ignorance in this administration that has got us where we are today.
Ambassador, I'm so glad that you brought up the word goals, because I think part of the issue for the buy-in from the American public on this ongoing war or reaching a peace deal is that the goalpost, seemingly to many of us, has continued to change. It was about they posed an imminent threat to either the United States or Israel, or that we cannot allow them to have enriched uranium. Now it's you can have your enriched uranium, you just can't make a weapon. And then there was the issue of regime change, which is seemingly completely off the table. So what exactly is your best understanding of what the president would like to see if and when a deal is reached?
Okay, so for now, the president understands very clearly the urgency to get the strait reopened. That is why this initial structure appears to be a dual opening of the blockades, the American blockade to stop and the Iranian blockade to stop, and allow traffic through. It'll be a diplomatic finesse as to whether there are fees, tolls, agreements for ships passing through. That is as yet unclear. Further along the line, of course, is getting a nuclear agreement. The Iranians have said from the beginning that they did not intend to have a nuclear weapon. U.S. intelligence was clear that they did not have a nuclear weapon and that they were not going in that direction. They were not trying to build a nuclear weapon, even when this attack began, or even the attack last June. So it seems entirely likely that a deal with that clarifies and solidifies that they are not going for a nuclear weapon can be reached. The challenge is, could it possibly be better than the Obama deal, which was for 15 years? And considering the amount of time that has gone on, if he gets another 15 years, that's 30 years past what the deal should have been. So the American people understand that the threat was not imminent. There are very few people who believe that at this point, based on our own intelligence and the statements of the Secretary of State, who said we got into this war because Israel was going to get into the war. So the president has a great deal of pressure to seal the deal, and soon, with elections coming up. The challenge, of course, is for the Israeli side, that continuing the war is what Prime Minister Netanyahu would like to see in order to strengthen his hand for elections.
Let's dig into that a little bit more, Ambassador, because not only are we talking about the war then with Iran, but Israel's other war with Lebanon that continues.
Indeed. And of course, allegedly, this agreement, this framework, would cover a ceasefire for not only the United States and Iran, Israel and Iran, but also in the region, which would include Lebanon. And Iran has been pretty clear on that from the beginning. Although the ceasefire between Israel and Hezbollah has not held, the fighting has continued very much since the day it was announced. The Iranians have been clear and have continued to include that necessity in their discussions with the United States. So we will see. We have conflicting. The Israelis say that President Trump says they have full range of action, including in Lebanon. So we'll have to see whether there's any more weight to what a ceasefire means with regard to Hezbollah and Lebanon. But even the talks that are going on in Washington between the Lebanese government and the Israelis, really, the Iranians have got to get credit for, because those wouldn't be happening if they hadn't been insisting on some level of a ceasefire, even from the beginning.
Former Ambassador Gina Abercrombie Winstanley, thank you so much, and I hope that we can speak again.
My pleasure. Happily.